There is a hand in the dark behind you, holding out a single coin. It is dull, tarnished, old enough that whatever face it once carried has been rubbed almost smooth. And every time you step toward the thing you have wanted for years, the hand comes forward. The coin catches what little light there is, and you stop. This is where the sabotage begins. Not at the beginning, but at the threshold. The proposal is written. The application is ready. The number in the account is finally the number you said out loud 11 months ago. The person you have been careful not to need keeps showing up anyway. The thing is no longer a fantasy. It has begun to answer back, and something in you goes quiet. There is no dramatic panic, no slammed door, just a grey settling in the chest, like a room going cold when the sun moves off the window. You do not send the proposal. You missed a deadline you remembered every day for 3 months. You find one flaw in the person and stare at it until it fills the whole frame. By Friday, the thing is over. This is self-sabotage at the threshold. A person can work for months, survive uncertainty, and then become strangely reasonable at the exact moment the work could change their life. Most explanations stop at fear of failure. This video follows a stranger possibility. Sometimes you do not pull back because success feels impossible. You pull back because success feels like separation, and some part of you reads that separation as betrayal. Jung never called this self-sabotage, but he described the conflict underneath it, and he gave the cost of crossing that line a severe name, a ransom. We will come back to the coin. Afterward, you build the explanation. You were tired. The timing was wrong. The opportunity was not as good as it looked. The person was not right after all. Some of those explanations may even be true, but interest does not usually evaporate at exactly the moment of arrival. Fatigue does not have that kind of aim. I am not talking about every unfinished project. I am talking about the ones that die when they become real and leave relief behind them, because the relief is the clue. Sometimes the relief is so clean it frightens you. Your shoulders come down for the first time in months. You sleep. There is a lightness in the house that has no business being there. The thing you said you wanted is gone, and some part of you is grateful. You do not get relief from losing something you wanted. You get relief from putting down something you were carrying, which means the ambition had become more than a desire. It had become a threat. Fear of failure is real. It can appear at the beginning, in the middle, or one step from the end. The closer judgment comes, the more failure can hurt. But there is another pattern. It waits until the final stretch, because the final stretch contains a different danger. At the beginning, success is imaginary. Near the end, it begins to separate you from the people, roles, and identity that formed you. The trigger is not only danger, sometimes the trigger is distance. For most of the journey, the goal is private. It can still mean anything. You can picture the new life without surrendering the old one. You can be the person who is going to leave, going to publish, going to earn more, going to be loved properly, without having to become that person yet. Near the threshold, possibility becomes biography. Other people will see it. Expectations will change. You may have to sustain what you built. The old complaints may no longer fit. The identity you used to share with the people around you becomes harder to wear without feeling dishonest. The final step is different because it rearranges the future. Failure, strange as it sounds, can preserve the old social map. You can return to the familiar room and describe how difficult the year has been. People know what to say. The room softens toward you. You are still legible there. Struggle is a membership card. Success can make you harder to place. Somebody says, "You have changed," and they say it smiling, and both of you know it was not entirely a compliment. You have not stopped loving them. But love and sameness are no longer the same thing. That is why the cooling often waits. It is not responding to the amount of work left. It is responding to the amount of identity that is about to become irreversible. Carl Jung never used the modern phrase self-sabotage as a named concept. I am using his work as a lens on one form of it. The moment becoming yourself begins to feel like leaving your people. Where the language is Jung's, I will say so. Where I am extending it, I will say that too. The word Jung used was individuation. It is often sold now as a gentle project. Become authentic. Find your true self. But Jung's version was not a lifestyle exercise. He described individuation as a movement away from personal conformity and toward a life that can no longer be lived entirely. That movement creates separation. Imagine being the first person in a family to earn enough that struggle is no longer the organizing fact of life. Nobody forbids it. There is no meeting where the family votes against your future, but slowly, the language changes. Complaints you once shared now place you on the other side of the table. Advice sounds like judgment even when you do not mean it that way. Your good news needs editing before you bring it home. You still understand the old room. The old room no longer entirely understands you. This does not mean the family is bad. It means belonging has a shape, and a person changing shape puts pressure on every relationship built around the earlier version. Somewhere below conscious language, the mind can perform a brutal arithmetic. If I rise, someone is diminished. If I leave this role, someone is abandoned. If I become different, I may no longer be loved in the same way. When the arithmetic reaches a certain number, the hand appears. A child does not need to hear. People like us never succeed. The rule can be learned from what happens when somebody does. A face tightens. A jerk is made. The successful relative becomes slightly suspect. Money is discussed in a different tone when it belongs to someone outside the house. Wanting more is praised in theory and punished in atmosphere. Nothing is formally taught, but the room has already written the curriculum. The family therapists, Ivan Bozormeni, Nagy, and Geraldine Spark, called one version of this invisible loyalty. They described relationships as carrying accounts across generations. Care, sacrifice, obligation, injury, entitlement, and debts. Nobody consciously agreed to, but everyone somehow feels. Control mastery theory, developed by Joseph Weiss, Harold Sampson, and their colleagues, describes related forms of separation. A person can experience having more, becoming freer, or suffering less, as though these improvements injure the people they love. These theories are not identical, and neither proves the whole argument of this video, but they name a recognizable conflict: the belief that becoming more fully yourself may be an act of disloyalty. Jung approached the early bond through a term he borrowed from the anthropologist Lucien Levy-Bruhl: participation mystique. The phrase refers to a condition in which the boundary between self and environment is not yet clear. A small child is not merely influenced by the household. For a time, the child experiences the household from inside it, before there is enough psychological distance to ask which feelings belong to whom. The child absorbs the tightening around money, the silence after conflict, the expression on a parent's face when another person becomes visible. It absorbs these things the way a room absorbs smoke. Jung's traceable formulation about the unlived life of parents appears in volume 17 of his collected works. His point was that what parents could have lived but did not can exert a powerful psychological effect on the child. An abandoned ambition does not always disappear. Sometimes it becomes a warning. Sometimes it becomes pressure. Sometimes the child is quietly assigned the job of succeeding for everyone and then punished when the success creates distance. Nobody has to design this. Your parents were shaped by rooms of their own. The rule may have passed through 5 people who never once put it into words. You are not looking for a villain. You are looking for a clause. The agreement underneath your life about how far you are allowed to go may have been written before you had language. Early in his career, Jung conducted word association experiments. A word would be spoken and the response timed. Around certain words, the response slowed. The person hesitated, repeated the prompt, forgot what had just happened, or answered in a way that seemed oddly charged. Jung called the interfering pattern a feeling-toned complex, a cluster of memories, images, and emotions organized around a sensitive core. What mattered was its relative autonomy. The complex was not fully under conscious command. It could interrupt intention, distort attention, and produce behavior the conscious person did not feel they had chosen. That helps explain a maddening experience. You can understand your own pattern and still repeat it. You can read the books, describe the childhood rule, and recognize the cooling while it is happening. Insight gives you recognition. It does not automatically give you control. The old response returns when the old condition returns. And the condition is proximity to the line. Willpower by itself is unreliable here. because the resisting part does not believe it is ruining your life. It believes it is preventing a larger loss. That is why I do not like the language of defeating the inner saboteur. It is poor description. Poor description produces poor strategy. The pattern has performed a job, often for decades. It has kept you inside a perimeter where belonging once felt safer. A small person who learns that wanting too loudly costs warmth is not weak. That learning is intelligent. The problem is that the protector is using old information. It is still guarding a house that was sold years ago. Beneath the cooling is often one of 3 warnings. You will be alone, you will become unrecognizable, or your success will injure someone you love. The work is not to destroy the guard. It is to discover which warning it is carrying and whether that warning still describes the world you live in. The shadow in Jung's work is not simply an evil twin. It contains what the conscious personality refuses to recognize, including qualities that may be useful, creative. Robert A. Johnson later helped popularize the language of the golden shadow, abilities and strengths that have been disowned because owning them once carried social or emotional danger. If ambition made people suspicious, ambition went downstairs. If confidence embarrassed the family, confidence learned to wear a disguise. If visible competence threatened a parent, competence was permitted only when accompanied by apology, chaos, or failure. The capability itself is not sabotaging you. The conflict around owning it is. One part of you can build the thing. Another part still associates visible ambition with rejection. The closer the work gets to proving your capability, the harder it becomes to pretend that capability is not yours. Sabotage resolves the conflict by making the evidence disappear. The launch fails. The relationship collapses. The application is never sent. You return to being somebody who might have succeeded, which is much safer than becoming somebody who did. It takes real ability to dismantle something you spent 2 years building at exactly the moment it could begin working. That is why shame is such an incomplete response. Shame looks at the wreckage and says there was not enough strength. Often there was enormous strength divided against itself. The goal is not to manufacture competence. It is to make ownership of competence survivable. Belonging is not the only thing the almost protects. It also protects possibility. Marie-Louise von Franz, who worked closely with Jung, wrote about the provisional life in her treatment of the puer aeternus. It is a life held in rehearsal. The real career, the real love, the real commitment, and the real self are always scheduled for later. The appeal is not simple laziness. Untested potential cannot be judged. A finished failure becomes part of your history. An unfinished future remains sacred. The person who could have never has to meet the person who tried and turned out to be ordinary. So the almost becomes the safest address in the world. Almost launched, almost finished, almost ready, almost in love. Nobody can evict you from a place you never fully moved into. This creates a second reward for last-minute collapse. The first reward is restored belonging. The second is restored fantasy. You get to return to the identity of the person with unusual potential, protected from the vulgar finality of an actual result. The pattern can therefore defend 2 things at once: your place in the old world and your idealized image of who you might become. That is one reason it is so difficult to surrender. Completion risks both exile and measurement. Work is only the cleanest place to see the pattern. The real trigger is any good thing that would force you to live outside the emotional rules that formed you. Someone is kind, consistent. They keep showing up. 6 weeks in, you lie beside them and realize this could become a life. Then the temperature changes. You find the flaw. You go cool without knowing why. You begin a small fight on a good evening and let it grow teeth. Attachment theory offers one reading. A nervous system calibrated to unpredictability may register calm as unfamiliar rather than safe. The loyalty reading asks a different question. Are you allowed a kind of happiness your family did not get? If nobody in your line had a peaceful love, peace can feel like more than unfamiliarity. It can feel like a judgment on what they endured or could not create. Attachment asks whether safety feels dangerous. Loyalty asks whether having that safety feels disloyal. Both may be operating. Neither means the relationship is automatically right. It means that a good relationship can activate more than hope. It can activate grief for the world in which that kind of love was unavailable. Your good thing becomes subtraction again, your peace taken from somebody else's account. Now the argument has to become more careful. Sometimes the stop is correct, sometimes the body is exhausted at a level one night's sleep will not repair. Sometimes the contract is exploitative, sometimes the person is unsafe, sometimes your health is failing, the numbers do not work, or the opportunity would cost more than it could return. Do not psychologize a real warning into a symbol. Some stops should hold. There is no perfect test, but there is a useful difference. Real caution usually becomes more specific under inspection. It names the clause in the contract, the missing money, the repeated lie, the medical symptom, or the behavior that crossed a boundary. A loyalty alarm tends to become vague and moral. It says, "Who do you think you are?" It says you are selfish, ridiculous, disloyal, or no longer one of us. It attacks identity instead of identifying an event. Ask the hesitation to answer 5 questions. What exactly is predicted to happen? What evidence supports that prediction? Is the danger physical, financial, relational? Does the fear name an event, or does it attack your character? Would the danger still exist if nobody from the old world ever learned about your decision? The final question matters. If the fear weakens when the imagined audience disappears, the threat may be belonging rather than the decision itself, and the evidence for this video's full argument has limits. A small longitudinal study published in Current Psychology in 2024 found that guilt and distress about success were associated with later self-handicapping and submissiveness scores, partly through imposter feelings. The study used self-report measures and did not observe people abandoning real projects at the final threshold. It supports one part of the pattern. It does not prove the whole theory I am building here. The imposter phenomenon itself is also contested. A 2026 Umbrella review found major inconsistency in how it is defined and measured, with no gold standard assessment. A 2024 Workplace review made a similar criticism about conceptual precision and methodological rigor, so I am not offering a diagnosis. I am offering a lens, supported in pieces by several traditions and tested finally against the shape of your own experience. The question is whether it explains the week, the Friday, and the strange sweetness of letting the thing die. Most advice about guilt says the feeling is false. Identify the cognitive distortion. Replace the thought. Sometimes that helps, but it can fail when the guilt is registering a real change. Success can create distance. There may be holidays where you feel half like a guest in your own history. A friend may stop telling you certain things. A parent may hear your independence as criticism. A sibling may compare lives even when you never do. The guilt may be detecting that cost. That does not make its moral verdict correct. A feeling can accurately register separation and falsely conclude that separation is betrayal. It can detect grief and call it wrongdoing. It can notice that a relationship will change and insist the change must be prevented. The guilt is information, not authority. You kept trying to reassure yourself that nothing would change. Something might change. The mistake was believing that every change had to be prevented rather than carried responsibly. Look again at the hand in the dark, the open palm, the coin. It is not a punishment. It is the recognition that becoming a distinct person has a price. The price is not obedience. It is not money paid to a relative. It is not shrinking until nobody feels threatened. The question is whether the cost can be accepted without allowing it to become a prohibition. That is where Jung's idea of ransom becomes useful. In an essay called Adaptation, Individuation, Collectivity, Jung argued that the person who separates from collective conformity, his answer was that the person must bring forth values that compensate for their absence from the old collective role. He called it a ransom. The word is severe because Jung's ethic is severe. Becoming separate is not enough. Private escape is not the same as individuation. A person cannot simply withdraw from every obligation, call the withdrawal authenticity, and expect the world to honor it. The separation has to become fruitful. That does not mean paying specific people for permission to live. The ransom is never obedience, compulsory money, or permanent availability. Nobody owes a debt to a person who abused them. Nobody has to remain small, so another person can remain comfortable. The payment is made outward, through the value, the change life becomes capable of producing. It might be work that is genuinely useful, knowledge carried out of your own ordeal and handed to somebody still inside theirs, a business that treats people more fairly than the places where you learn to work, a home where the next child does not inherit the same silence, a piece of art that gives language to an experience other people thought they had to carry alone. Breaking a pattern is also production. It creates a different inheritance. The ransom is not repentance. It is harvest. I am extending Jung's argument here. The guilt does not have to disappear before you move. It needs a destination. If the only imagined outcomes are betrayal or retreat, retreat will continue to feel moral. But if separation can produce something that moves back toward life, the mind no longer has to choose between belonging and sterile escape. You leave one role and return value in another form. The value does not need to be grand. The coin in the hand is small. That matters. A person can turn ransom into another impossible standard and use it to delay again. The point is not to earn the right to exist through extraordinary achievement. The point is to let the life become useful beyond the defense of the self, and the payment can only be made after you go. You cannot bring back values from a life you refused to live. You cannot share knowledge you never allowed yourself to learn. You cannot build the safer room while remaining permanently inside the old one. Refusal is not the cost-free option. It has consequences too: resentment, projection, the slow poisoning of love by a sacrifice nobody consciously requested. Later in Volume 17, Jung wrote about vocation as something with its own authority, almost like a private voice calling a person away from the well-worn path. He was clear that following it could end badly. His point was not that every desire is destiny. His point was that some demands of personality do not vanish simply because conformity is safer. So the choice is rarely between paying and remaining free. It is between accepting a conscious cost and paying unconsciously for years. Understanding the pattern will not prevent it from returning. The complex is relatively autonomous. The old condition can still call up the old response. The next time something becomes real, the grayness may arrive with the same reasonable voice and the same sweetness of putting the burden down. You need a procedure that does not depend on feeling brave. The cooling is not a neutral vantage point. It has a predictable conclusion, and it will reach that conclusion with impressive logic. Create a waiting period for irreversible decisions. 48 hours. 72, if the decision can safely wait. During that period, you do not quit, cancel, delete, confess dramatically, end the relationship, or destroy the work. Waiting is not the same as forcing yourself forward. It simply prevents a temporary state from receiving permanent authority. Write the danger in one sentence without using words about your character. Not, I am selfish. My sister may stop speaking to me if I move. Not, this is a terrible idea. The contract allows the company to terminate without paying the final installment. Specific fear can be investigated. Moral fog can only be obeyed. If the danger becomes clearer, respond to the danger. Renegotiate the clause. See the doctor. Ask the direct question. Leave the unsafe person. If the fear becomes less specific the longer you examine it, you have learned something too. Complete 4 sentences. If this works, I become somebody who, the person or world I may feel farther from is, the old rule I would be breaking is, what I imagine they would say is, do not turn this into an indictment of the people involved. The purpose is not to prosecute your childhood. It is to make the invisible audience visible. The system gains power by remaining atmospheric. Give it a chair, a face, and a sentence. Some success will change relationships. Pretending otherwise makes the guilt louder because part of you knows the reassurance is false. Say what may actually be lost. Maybe you will no longer be the struggling one. Maybe a friendship organized around mutual complaint will weaken. Maybe you will become less available. Maybe a parent will not understand the work. Maybe you will miss a version of yourself that belonged more easily. Grieve that honestly. But grief is not a verdict. Missing the old room does not mean you must live there forever. The protector thrives in private thought. Give reality a chance to answer. Press send. Submit the application. Publish the page. Make the appointment. Accept the safe invitation. Transfer the first small amount into the account. Take one action that exists outside your head and cannot be converted back into another evening of analysis. Do not wait for complete permission. The part you are asking does not know how to grant it in advance. The action should be small enough to perform and real enough to alter the situation. Self-sabotage does not always happen before the threshold. Sometimes it waits 3 months. The launch works, then you stop answering messages. The relationship becomes secure, then you create chaos. The income rises, then spending rises faster. You achieve the thing and immediately build a workload no human body can sustain. That is the same protector using a different exit. Before the result arrives, decide how you will recognize post-success sabotage. Choose one person who can tell you when you are disappearing. Set rules around sleep, spending, and major decisions. Expect a period of grief and disorientation, even if the outcome is good. A new life can be correct and still feel unfamiliar. Do not make this heroic. Choose one outward value, small enough to become real. Who is helped if the work exists? What becomes easier for another person because you cross the line? What pattern ends here? Maybe the answer is one employee treated well, one child raised without the old shame, one honest book, one person mentored, one family member helped without being allowed to own your future. The ransom is not the price of permission. It is what turns separation into contribution, and then send the proposal before asking the old world to tell you that you are allowed to become the person who can send it. The hand is still there. It will probably be there the next time too. The coin will catch the light. The temperature will fall. A reasonable voice will explain why the thing no longer matters. Nothing in this video makes the complex disappear. One thing is different now. You know what the feeling may be registering. It may not be asking you to fail. It may be warning that going through will change your place in the world that formed you. Some part of that warning may be true. The change may carry grief. It may require new boundaries. It may leave you standing half inside one life and half inside another for a while. But change is not automatically betrayal. So reach out. Take the coin. Accept that the leaving has weight without confusing the weight with a command to remain. And remember that the coin was never meant to stay closed in your fist. A ransom becomes a ransom only when it moves outward into work, care, knowledge, protection, or a different inheritance. The gesture is not stopping. The gesture is taking the cost seriously and continuing anyway, which leaves one question worth carrying into the next week before it works. If you go through, what will you bring back?